All right, everybody, welcome back. If you're just tuning in, today is the 100th episode of the Entrepreneurial Web. Woo!
All right.
Awesome. 100, baby.
100. I'm your host, Jeremiah Fox. Yes, they let me stay on for all 100 episodes. We'll see how that goes at the end. First half, had some dear friends up, some business coaches and entrepreneurs. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit to something that emerged over the show and my social media over the course of time and has become a major part of it. And that is Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Joining us now, Ryan Kovach, coming out of Austin, Texas, president of RKCMO. We've also got Nick Lozano out of Washington, D.C. He's the producer of the Lead X podcast. And then Dom Jackson, San Diego, via way of New York and New Jersey. And he's got his hands in all kinds of podcasts and digital things. So these guys all excel in media and outreach and podcasts, but they all three are also Brazilian Jiu Jitsu practitioners at different stages of the journey, which never ends. And my message for this portion of the show, yes, there are two messages today because it's that freaking hot. It's something my first Brazilian Jiu Jitsu instructor used to say all the time about the journey to black belt. And he would say, it's not about what you get in the end, it's about who you become along the way. And I think the same is very true of being a business owner and entrepreneur, but also when you're running media, you know, you're not the same person way down the road. Once you make it, once you become famous like me, you're not quite the same person as you were when you started. And you're never done. There's still way more road to go, but you do reach this point of proficiency where you kind of feel good. You've gotten knocked around, you've gotten banged around, you've been through enough shit and turmoil and technical difficulties and malfunctions that you just shake it off, brush the dirt off, wipe the tears away, and get back in there and do it again. So I don't know if you guys were listening, but I don't think any of you are strangers to Clubhouse. I'm pretty sure we've all shared some rooms at some point. I want to pass some questions around. We'll do it kind of Clubhouse style. You're going to get two minutes each. The first one, Ryan, I'm going to tee you up first. Ryan is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and again, also the president of his company. How has training in Jiu Jitsu informed your professional life? 2 minutes.
Yeah, man. Yeah. In a huge way. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu obviously teaches you to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. And I think as a business owner, you know, almost every day presents something uncomfortable. There's a lot of wins and happiness and laughter internally, but every day presents something uncomfortable, right? A customer feedback that maybe wasn't exactly what you wanted, or an internal employee, having some personal issues or health issues or whatever that you want to work with, right? Or maybe the campaign that you spent a bunch of money on isn't performing the way you thought. So it's all uncomfortable. But you don't lose your shit over it, right? Like, you learn that being uncomfortable can be comfortable. You learn that sometimes just getting smashed isn't all that bad. It's helping you become better, refining your process, right? So in my opinion, and it also, like, if we want to talk imposter syndrome, right? Like, I feel like when I got my black belt, and every other black belt I've ever spoken to has been embarrassed. Like, I don't deserve this. Like, I don't deserve this belt. I don't know shit. These blue belts coming up know more technique and submissions and everything under the sun than I know, right? Like, I'm not knowledgeable in this art, right? Like, that's the thing. It's just it's infinite. So as business owners, I think we show up every day going, damn, we've got a good business. I know that I'm running a good business. My bank account says that, but I don't feel like I know it. I don't feel like I know shit, right? It's always changing, always evolving, something new every day to learn, some program, some law, some this or that, right? That's a major shakeup that you just got to stay on top of. So for me, it's been super helpful in understanding, don't lose your shit when stuff gets uncomfortable. Stay comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I think what you said about, getting black belt is probably true of like nearly every belt promotion. Nick Nick and I are in a very similar stage. Did you get your purple belt, Nick?
I have not, but so unfortunately for me, I travel a lot for work.
Yeah.
That impeded some of my progress, but I'll get there soon. I'm not worried.
The number one way to get it, Nick, is go ask your instructor for it.
Just ask. Yeah.
Well, when I was a white belt, I'm like white belt for life, But
well, so like when I got my blue belt, I felt like I'd earned that, But when they gave me my purple belt, I was like, I don't know, man. Am I really a purple belt? And then, the school shut down and I ended up at Henzo's headquarters and I come in there as a purple belt and I'm like, fuck, man, I am not a purple belt. And they were like, yes, you are. Just keep working. So there's even levels to purple. Yeah, right. Exactly. All right, Nick, you're up. 2 minutes. How has training helped you stay the course?
Yeah, so I would agree with everything that Ryan said earlier, about comfortable being uncomfortable. But the other thing it has also taught me is, learning as you go, adaptability, right? Because it's constantly changing. Like when we do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, you start getting your A moves, right? Your game that works on your training partner, works all the time. Then all of a sudden they start getting wise to it and it doesn't work anymore. And you've got to adjust how you're doing stuff. And the same thing applies to either media or business. We do things for a long time. They work, and then all of a sudden they stop working. Mm-hmm. And, it's giving you that ability to go, okay, there's a problem here. I need to address this, right? You don't freak out about it initially. It's like, there's an issue here. I can just figure out my way around it. It might not work the first few times I do it, but as we go on, as I adjust and they adjust to me, then I can use that to continually learn and progress through my journey. And I feel like just that mentality alone has helped me through my entrepreneurial journey or digital media. That's how I got into doing digital media. Is I just threw stuff on the wall and seen what worked. I got on LinkedIn and I just did what everybody else did. Right? It's like, oh, what's Gary Vee doing? Let me try that. Do a screenshot of my tweet and nobody reacts to it. So then you adjust to it. So I would say that the main thing that's come out for me is just the ability to learn and constantly have that learner hat on. I don't feel like I'm an expert in anything, but I feel like I can pick up anything at any point in time because I have this willingness and this ability to just figure it out and learn. The resources are there. You just have to be willing to put out the effort.
It's funny. We all laughed when he said that, but that was just masking our tears, right? Because we're like, yeah, oh, he does that shit. I'm gonna do that too. And it's like crickets chirping.
We all do it. We all do it. It's like, oh,
man, it's such a letdown.
and then Dom here, we connected on Twitter. Nick and Ryan, we both connected on LinkedIn and Dom via Twitter. And it was around fitness. Dom was you may still be a personal trainer, but I know that was what you were mainly doing, and I know you started to transition away from it. And so, we started a conversation around fitness, and then we realized we both had podcasts and it went down the rabbit hole. And I kept, suggesting Brazilian Jiu Jitsu to Dom, and things were totally shut down at this point. And he's like, I'm totally into it. I'm going to start. And we got started. Literally, I would put up a technique. It's something basic, like a technical get up or a sprawl or something like that, leg pummeling. And I would put it on TikTok and I would send it to him and he would duet it. And we started like this, not instruction, but just like,
cool.
Just a little introduction, let's say. And now Dom has actually started, training. He's gone in for some rounds, very early stages, white belt, but often people argue that's the best one. That's the most important promotion is the white belt. So you're up, Dom. You're fresh into it, but no stranger to how fitness and just exercise and health can influence your professional life. You got it. 2 minutes.
Cool. Yes. Thanks for having me on the 100th episode. So glad to be here. But yeah, being like the whitest of a white belt right now, like I'm 4 months into the game, like I was still a couple of weeks ago, I was still figuring out like what even the strategy is to go in before. It was just like, when you coming in with a fitness background, I was like, all right, I'm kind of big, kind of strong. I can take that, I work out. Like I'm not completely, a new person to this, but I learned very quickly that, without technique, you're nothing. So I'm having guys half my size choking me out, throwing me around. And it was great, that feeling of like, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing. But like the first step was like, just learn how to survive, get that closed guard in, get that half guard in, just find a way to keep yourself sustained before they get you. And then, I'm at the point now where I'm finally getting like a little bit of a strategy now. Like maybe I can get an arm bar, maybe I can get an Americana. Like I have an idea of how to get places now. It's just as far as executing how to get there. And I think it really fine-tuned. Like I really felt myself transform other places too, whether it be my podcast or with my my training business of like, oh, like, I need to have a better strategy for how I plan to go into these things because, I was kind of in that empty space of like, oh, like I have an idea what I want to do. I have an idea of what my goal is, but as far as the funnel of which way to put my actions is where I need to go next. So I think that, being in that beginner space, like Nick said, like Ryan was saying, like that beginner space of like, you're always learning and always adapting, getting comfortable, being with the uncomfortable is so true. Because when you have a guy twice your size or half your size on top of you, and you're just like, I don't know what to do here. This is tough. And, that humility of being like, all right, like you got me this time, but I'm going to learn how to get better next time. And then even just going through some of the videos that you were sending me, Jeremiah, of just like basic shrimping or, like rolling, like the fact that me versus those videos versus me now is just so funny because the progress of just the basics of doing them over and over again. So, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I take away from whether you're doing, whether training, jiu-jitsu or business, media, following Gary Vee, you're always going to come in. You're going to have that space where you have no idea what you're doing and have no idea what anything is. And once you're like okay with being like, all right, I have no idea what I'm doing, let me just find one way to get some ground that I can kind of hold on to and build up from there. You'll have your foundation, be able to adjust into whatever form of whatever you're trying to do will become. So I'm having a great time. I'm learning a lot, but definitely getting my ass kicked along the way.
As you
Sounds
said.
like business.
Yep, exactly. No, it's wonderful. Like out of the mouths of babes, Dom is the newest at it, but that was like the most profound response. And it's because you're so fresh and that excitement. It's like when you first start jiu-jitsu or first start your business and you're just like, everything's like, all the colors are so bright, it's so great. Yeah. All right. We're going to pick back up with this in just a minute. We're going to take a break and we'll come back and run a little further with that. All right. So hang tight, everybody. All right, everybody. Wrapping up the 100th episode of the Entrepreneurial Web. Yes. I'm your host, right. Jeremiah Fox. Joining me for this portion, Ryan Kovach, Nick Lozano, Dom Jackson. We're talking about all of us Brazilian Jiu Jitsu practitioners in various levels of the journey. Its influence over our professional life, whether it be, business ownership, entrepreneurship, social media, podcasting, mixed media, all these things. And, lots of really great things said. And I wanted like dissect it into two different realms. Ryan, you were talking about getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. And I think of like just starting my business and how you're just you're in the mortal and pestle and you just gotta wait it out, man. You just gotta wait it out. And Nick too, you're like, all right, you got to adjust, you got to figure it out. But then like, that's for me, that was like the early stages. But Dom, I think you really nailed it with this focus on strategy. And it's so great that you're thinking that already, because I just started thinking that like last month and I've been at it for 6 years. So I recently started like 2 weeks ago, started taking MMA classes at Henzo's, which if you think the jiu-jitsu classes there are hard.
Yeah, right.
Everything I thought I knew was questioned, and you understand the reason for the most basic movements in jiu-jitsu at a much, much deeper level when someone can punch you and kick
Punch you in
you
the face.
standing or on the ground or in the middle or up against the wall. Like I will never take a shrimping exercise for granted again.
Right.
And it's funny because, you know, I was never an studious person. I dropped out of 2 high schools. I managed to squeeze out a master's degree in music, but only because it was in music and they let my dumb ass slide through the system. And I, you know, I did okay, but I never was big into college. I've been in the food industry for all these years, and I get these kids that like are fresh out of culinary school, and I'm like, you suck. You've never worked. You've never actually put this into practice. And studying Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and Muay Thai for 6 years and walking into an MMA class, I'm like, oh, I just was given a job. I was just in school for 6 years, and now I'm in the workforce, and I'm getting fucked up. And the instructor talks constantly. He's like, you know, fights are chaotic. You know, you're in there, and there's just so many variables. Even in MMA that has rules. Like imagine if it was a street fight. Jesus, you know. MMA with this rule set is still like super duper chaotic. And he's like, yeah, there's a million different things that can happen. Sure, you could come in and just throw it up against the wall and see what works. He's like, but nothing will benefit you more than having like a 3-step strategy and just like constantly try to come back to that. You know, they say make the fight. The guy that wins is the guy that makes the fight his fight. So you got these 2 guys, like both have these fantastic skill sets, but whoever gets to impose their will on the other, who gets to fight his fight, is the one that often wins, whether it's just a decision or something more decisive like a knockout or a submission. And I started to really think that way in terms of business, and more so in terms of like future success and growth. Not just like, oh, okay, I survived. Like it's not enough to survive. You know, if you're thinking that way, you're dead. You know, it's like, how am I going to grow? Because today's money is not going to be tomorrow's money. It's not going to be suffice. So now I'm starting to think really strategically in terms of business, and not just be, you know, we're entrepreneurs. We're creative. I mean, Ryan, you're a musician and you do all this stuff in media. Nick and Dom, you both do podcasts and stuff. I mean, it requires a certain level of creativity. So we're good with that. We're like, yeah, I'm okay with the chaos, but you can't live in that shit forever. It just it takes its toll. So like, this strategy component, like it's working really well, because I would never survive. I wouldn't have made it out of my 3rd MMA class if I wasn't like, okay, fuck this. I'm tired of getting punched. I need a strategy, and being exhausted, but relying on like these things that are vetted and tried and true. I'm like, okay, if I can do this in business, maybe I'm going to get some belt one day from somebody.
Yeah.
I'm curious. We don't even have 2 minutes per person. Just like really quickly, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll start. I guess we can go in the same order. So essentially what you're really finding out is you spent 6 years in jiu-jitsu. You have a great foundation there. But in MMA, there's boxing. You have spent no time in boxing. There is
I've done boxing too.
Okay,
and Muay Thai. But all of it together, that's a whole different thing.
Putting it all together, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you've cooked a chicken before and you've cooked pasta before, but have you cooked a chicken pasta dinner, right? Like, so it's a recipe, right? So putting it all together is an entirely different sport. And, you know, I've trained with multiple currently active UFC fighters right now that are in their prime. And some of them don't even have a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, but their jiu-jitsu is so fucking good. And it has to be, because if they're not, then they're getting their faces pounded in. So they rarely do jiu-jitsu classes. It's the grappling in the MMA that is keeping them from getting punched, kicked, kneed, and everything else that actually creates amazing jiu-jitsu.
It's funny, a bunch of the MMA guys are all blue belts, and they just fuck me up. And I'm like,
they'll just kick your fucking ass.
Even your jujitsu is better than mine. Like,
right. No, it really honestly is.
It's great. All right, Nick, go. 60 seconds.
Yeah, I'd agree. You know, the strategy, it's having a focus when you're coming into something. And even though, you know, you're doing Muay Thai, but even jiu-jitsu, people get lost, right? They see all these fancy techniques, and all of a sudden, you know, they've got a handful of things that they try to do, and they're not very good at anything. Instead of honing down, getting a strategy, saying, okay, I'm going to focus on these 3 things, and I want to be really good at these 3 things. Because a lot of times that's all you need, right? And we do the same thing with media or podcasts, right? We look at the stuff that people are creating, like, okay, well, I need to be good at creating the graphics and the audio and doing pre-rolls and ads and all this, instead of just focusing on 2 or 3 things at a time. So I think having that ability to come in and focus to create that strategy, to kind of like what you're saying when you do your fight or your match, you're imposing your will, right? Mm-hmm. So you're taking that strategy to go somewhere and do something tactically. I think a lot of times people get tactics confused with strategy. Strategy is how you're going to get somewhere, and the tactics are the things that you're going to do to implement your strategy.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, Dom, 60 seconds.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the difference between, being like an animal at a domestic animal at home and being an animal in the wild is like a whole different world, And I can only imagine that even if someone isn't at the same tier as you as belt, but like someone that's used to training in the trenches, their level of just adaptability and experience is definitely totally different. So I think being in the media space and trying to figure out what to do, I think that strategy thing of me being like, oh, like Gary Vee does this or Joe Rogan does this, and kind of trying to find out who you actually are in a more wild setting, because anything could work. Finding your spot in nature, in the wild, is definitely the best way. So whether it be in MMA or in media, finding your strategy in nature is definitely the best way to grow, because school's not going to get you there in a system that way.
I agree.
Right. Yeah. And you got to put yourself out there, and like starting this show, I had no fucking idea what I was doing. Never done a show before. I knew who Joe Rogan was, and that was it. I didn't know shit else. And I put myself out there at least 100 times.
Dude, that's so awesome, man.
I know, it feels great. And so many awesome things have come out of it, including relationships with people like yourselves.
Absolutely.
You've all been on the show multiple times, and I look forward to having you on multiple times more. And I wish you all continued success in your jiu-jitsu and entrepreneurial journeys, because
you as well.
Thank you.
Same
I appreciate
to you,
that.
Yep,
you guys, I want you to know, like, you all, whether it was just a social media post or a DM or a text message or a show, you guys have always been a positive influence on what I'm doing, and I'm imitating you all.
Right back to you, man.
Same to you, brother.
Just as much as Joe Rogan and Gary Vee. So thank you all. We got to wrap it up. I really appreciate you taking the time once again to come on and being here for this. It means so much to me.
It's an honor.
And look forward to you all hitting these milestones as well. So
happy 100, brother.
100.
Yeah, happy 100.
I feel young, man. I feel young for 100.
Take care.
I trained twice today. I'm hot. I feel good. All right. Thank you. 101 coming up next week. We're hopping right back into fire, everybody. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Peace out.
Take care.
Woo!